So we've lost the great Adam West, the Batman without whom it's kind of doubtful there would have been so many subsequent Batman apart from the comics, and hell, without his show, who knows if even those would have stayed all that popular. Remember, once upon a time, this guy who can't even use his own name anymore was outselling Superman, and this guy was considered the trendiest counterculture icon in all of comics. In any case, I've been wanting to do this episode for quite some time, kept putting it off, and now it feels like I waited exactly 1 week too long. That sucks. This one hits a lot harder than I expected it to. Anyway. The Adam West Batman show is fucking awesome. I feel like saying that is a lot less controversial over the past few years than it was in the past, but once upon a time, making that observation was pretty much verboten in comic book superhero fandom, particularly from the mid-80s through the 1990s, when damn near the entirety of the genre, and Batman comics in particular, were using how far away from anything resembling that show could get as a measure of quality. Ostensibly, this was because the quote-unquote campy TV series had poisoned the cultural perception of very serious stories about unsupervised men karate-chopping poor people in Halloween costumes, thank you Lego Barbara Gordon. At this point, I've probably done enough episodes about how that was mostly bullshit and instead largely a concerted effort by comics publishers and Diamond to reorient the market base entirely toward one group of middle-class man-children who were more likely to fork over obscene amounts of cash on prestige reprints and overpriced specialty collectibles, but the fact is, focusing on how tedious and shitty the I'm Not Adam West version of Batman quickly became, and then stayed for decades. Why did you say that name? It kinda does its own small disservice to this particular television landmark. Yes, when viewed through the prism of how tiresome modern Batman has become, the upbeat, colorful, and enthusiastically all-ages version is downright refreshing, but it overlooks that 60s Batman was actually a really good TV show, along with being a pretty accurate reflection of where the comics had been for a long, long time. Clever, sharp, well-written, great cast, memorable characters, an unforgettable sense of self. It's just good TV, and on top of that, it was also way ahead of its time in many key respects like diversity in casting. Let's not act like that's a small thing either. Can you imagine the utter shit show that would have unfolded from the white genocide crowd if the goddamn Dark Knight movies had cast a black Catwoman or a Latino Joker, and not just in the form of two random actors either? Cesar Romero was a guy who'd nicknamed himself the Latin from Manhattan and whose earlier film roles had helped to define the Latin lover archetype in Hollywood, while Eartha Kitt was a political activist who'd been under surveillance as a potential subversive by the CIA since the 1950s. Not to mention, without this series, the Riddler, Catwoman, Penguin probably never would have been restored to A-list villain status in the comics. Mr. Freeze flat out wouldn't exist at all, and neither would Barbara Gordon incarnation of Batgirl, you know, only maybe the third or fourth most important character in the franchise at this point. To be honest, I think some of the problem with the series' reputation is that for a long time it wasn't really widely available. It was out of heavy syndication for a lot of the 90s, and disputes over music rights and appearances by certain celebrity guests kept the full run from being on home video for a long-ass time, so I feel like almost a whole generation only ever experienced Adam West Batman by secondhand reputation and through the movie version. And while the movie is definitely a lot of fun in its own right, it plays a lot more like a highlight reel of the gadgets, vehicles, stunts, and fight scenes than a proper representation of what the series actually was, which, though you did get typically a big fight scene, some gadget slapstick, and a trap escape at least once per episode, a lot of the actual humor was more about sly, dialogue-driven satire and cheeky background gags, with Adam West's unbreakably righteous straight-man delivery as Batman striking the exact right tone that such a bizarre production demanded.
Self-control is sure tough sometimes, Batman.
All virtues are, old chum. Indeed, that's why they're virtues.
Yes, adult viewers got to enjoy a brutal skewering of the hard-nosed patriarch authority figure of 60s TV hero archetype vis-a-vis having that kind of character pose dramatically while rattling off comic book bullshit in a bright blue bat costume, but kids were able to take him completely seriously as just a real flesh-and-blood Batman.
I want to be a hero like you, Cape Crime Fighter.
Being a hero or a crime fighter is not what counts the most, Andy. It's growing up to be a good citizen. And if that's what you meant, it's the highest possible compliment you could pay me.
But that subtly subversive edge also carried over to the broader series, which frequently framed West and Burt Ward's Batman and Robin, despite being officially deputized agents of the police in this continuity, as a kind of counterculture alternative to establishment law enforcement. In this version, however well-meaning, Commissioner Gordon is kind of a dim bulb.
Oh, Barbara, I've been so worried about you. And what was Batgirl doing here?
Batgirl?
Not only comically unable to recognize that Batman and Bruce Wayne are the same guy despite knowing both of them very well, but completely out of his depth at confronting the newfangled criminality embodied by the various supervillains, with Batman's encyclopedic education, worldliness, broad cultural knowledge base, and general forward thinking presented as a superior alternative. Remember, we're smack dab in the Vietnam era at this point, so the idea that established institutions of law and order were anything other than righteous and reliable was a statement even in a comedy context. In the Season 3 episode Louis the Lilac, Milton Berle plays an invented villain who was essentially essentially a male gangster version of Poison Ivy who torments and kidnaps the leader of a group of Gotham City hippies called the Flower Children. In the story proper, Batman first gets involved because Commissioner Gordon and the cops are dismissive of the Flower Children and can't even be bothered to look into the kidnapping.
Barbara, the police have many serious things to worry about.
Besides some Princess Primrose being whisked away from a public park in a flower-mobile.
Sure, this wasn't a show that was going to get deep into the politics of what real-life Flower Children believed or organized around, but not only did audiences of the day know exactly what was going on here, during this same era, other primetime TV shows like Dragnet were constantly vilifying hippies and other counterculture movements as dangerous subversives, so it's kind of a big deal that Batman, a symbol of moral authority and law and order aimed particularly at children, is openly taking their side here.
Well, Robin and I were just putting a flower decal on the Batmobile. We're to be guests of honor at a flower inn this afternoon.
The Flower Children think we're cool, man, like we turn them on, you know?
Yes, please be gentle with your visitors, Commissioner. Although it may not be understood by more literal minds, in their own way, they're doing what they can to correct the world's woes with love and flowers.
Adam West is a tremendous loss to both geek culture and to the world, period. By all accounts, a good man who meant a lot to a lot of people. If there's a silver lining to this, it's that perhaps after decades of simultaneously being both typecast as Batman and held up by grim and gritty fanboys as the anti-Batman, he did live to see pop culture turn around on his portrayal. Batman the Animated Series, while definitely taking its most obvious cues from the darker age of the property, added to Batman's origin a superhero TV series that Bruce Wayne had been inspired by as a child and brought West on board to play the character of the Grey Ghost, explicitly framing him as the direct spiritual ancestor of what many fans now consider to be the greatest Batman of all time.
As a kid, I used to watch you with my father. The Grey Ghost was my hero.
So it wasn't all for nothing.
In 2013, DC Comics began publication of a regular series that continued the storyline from the show, which, by the way, you can now get a hold of easily in gorgeous Blu-ray restorations from Warner Brothers, It's About Damn Time, under the banner of Batman 66, ultimately running for 30 issues. In 2016, DC Animation produced a fully animated feature on the same theme, titled Batman Return of the Caped Crusaders, the storyline of which involved an explicit rebuke of the gritty fascist version of Batman and allowed West to return to the role for the first time officially since Legends of the Superhero TV specials in 1979, and we'll have to talk about those another time. Supposedly, West had completed vocals for a sequel, which was set to feature William Shatner as a 66-style version of Two-Face. Don't you want to see that? At the time of his passing, and I really hope that turns out to be the case. Adam West lived quite a life, and it feels like the world was only just beginning to appreciate how much it needed the hero he gave us. There's probably a lesson in that.
Good, even though it's sometimes sidetracked. Always, repeat, always triumphs over evil.
Hey gang, here's a question that keeps coming up. If your handle is MOVIEBOB, where are your movie reviews? Well, my old reviews are in a lot of places. You'll find many of them on my YouTube channel, but you'll find the brand new ones on Geek.com, an awesome site that's also your one-stop news source for science, TV, gaming, technology, nerd culture, the works. You can find all my reviews directly by going to geek.com/author/bchipman, because that's my real name, and you can get regular updates on all my reviews and all of Geek.com's other great content by signing up for their kick-ass newsletter at subscribe.geek.com. And don't forget to also subscribe to the Geek.com YouTube channel, where you'll find the videos that accompany my reviews and tons of other great content too. Remember, that's Geek.com, the Geek.com newsletter, and Geek.com on YouTube. Make sure you don't miss out on all the latest MOVIEBOB reviews. You can also check out my own new website, MOVIEBOB Central, where you'll find my blog, links to all my work, and shop for my books, ebooks, and future MOVIEBOB products. And please remember to like these videos, share them with all of your friends, and subscribe to this channel. Thank you for watching another MOVIEBOB production.